sometimes we don't have a graph or a picture shown when we're trying to find the slope of a line. Sometimes we're just given 2 points. Okay, something like down here, where we might say find the slope between the following 2 points if a line passes through those two. So when we have that, what we have to do is use a different definition for slope. Instead of rise over run, we're going to use what I call, or what is called the slope formula. So the slope formula is m is equal to, and we do have to memorize this, m is equal to, and then there is a fraction bar along with, or division symbol along with 2 subtraction signs. I want you to remember that. It kind of looks like a division symbol a little bit. So it is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right. So this is the slope formula. Like I said, this is what you should remember. One way that helps me to memorize it, or I tell students to help memorize it, is I call it the backwards formula. Normally, x comes first, but in this case, y does. And normally, 1 comes before 2, but in this case, 2 comes before 1 in both of these. So just for memorization's sake, that's something I like to remember sometimes, the backwards formula. So in other words, what this is it's the difference between the y's, or also known as the change in y, over the change in x. Okay, and this is literally what rise over run is. Okay, so the slope formula is the same thing as change in y over change in x, which is the same thing as rise over run. And what I mean by that is change in y being rise, you're literally counting how much it changed, right, vertically when you do a rise, and then when you're running, you're checking how much it changed horizontally, okay, or an x. So rise over run, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So how we're going to do this? Well, what's important to note is that we really should identify which of these points are 1 and which are 2. So that 1 and 2 could be a little confusing, but what that really just means is it's saying this is point number 1, this is point number 2. So if we remember, it always goes x and then y, x and then y, and if this one's going to be our first point, well, this is x1, y1, x2, and y2. Okay, so this is a little subscript. It's not an exponent. It's not like x to the second power. It's x sub 2. It's this little subscript to help categorize it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write down, start with the division symbol and 2 subtraction signs. I want you to always start with that. It's going to really help when we're dealing with negatives. So if we look back to the formula, it says y2 comes first, so y2 is 3, and then y1 is 7, so 3 minus 7 will be the numerator, and then we're going to do x2, which in this case is negative 2, minus x1, which is 1. Okay, cool. So now we're going to go ahead and just do that subtraction. 3 minus 7, that ends up being negative 4, and we can use keep change opposite if we want to. Plus a negative. Okay, so that's negative 4. And then right here we have negative 2 minus 1. I'm going to do it first here, so keep change opposite. Negative 2 plus negative 1 is negative 3. Okay, we're basically there. However, we do want to simplify this. We don't want to leave it with 2 negative signs. So we would just change this to being 4 over 3, and then just finalize it by writing m equals 4 over 3. Remember that we are going to keep slope written as an improper fraction. We're not going to change this to 1 1/3. It's just the way that we write our right slope, so we can see clearly what rise and run is. Just to give you some little points and steps here, it says it helps to draw arrows. What we mean by that is sometimes some students will write it like this to show, x2 to x1 and y to y1. Okay, and then lastly, subtracting a negative means to add the positive. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do one more with you. Actually, maybe I'll do 2 more. You can always pause it if you feel like you get it. But I do want you to watch at least this one more with me. Okay, so we're going to do this one right here. I'll go down a little bit. So I'm going to start by labeling my points. So x1, y1, x2, y2. All right. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to write down the formula one more time. I have it right up there, but I think it would be helpful to have it again. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, here we go. So I'm going to start with drawing that line and my 2 subtraction symbols. Okay, again, it's really important, and I think it's going to help a lot here. Ready? So y2 is 2, y1 is negative 1. So that negative sign is already here, so we're going to go ahead and write down a negative 1. Okay, if you didn't write that minus sign, a lot of people forget to have it twice, right? But the minus sign is already in the formula, and now we're doing a negative 1. So then we have x2 is 4, and x1 is 6. Okay, so when doing this, 2 minus negative 1, we can go ahead and keep change opposite of that. The additive inverse, so 2 plus 1 is 3. And right here we have 4 minus 6. I know that is negative 2. So the slope here is negative 3/2. Okay, you can have that negative sign out front, you can have it with the 3, you can have it with the 2. They all mean the same thing. You just have to make sure you only have one negative sign there. Alright, one more that I'm going to look at with you is number 3, or the third one here. So, again, I'm always going to start by writing my fraction bar and subtraction sign so I don't accidentally mix that up. And we're going to go ahead and label our points as well. So x1, y1, x2, y2. And we are going to start with y2, as the formula states. y2 is 1, y1 is 7, x2 is negative 3, and x1 is negative 1. Take note that we have to write the negative sign again. The minus sign is already in the formula. So, as we do this, 1 minus 7, you might know is negative 6. We can also do keep change opposite to help us out. And then here, I definitely want to do keep change opposite. So, boom, boom. We have negative 3 plus 1. They're competing in tug of war. The negative is higher, so that is a negative 2. Right, this has to be simplified, okay? N equals negative 6 over negative 2 is not going to be a good final answer. So we want to, first off, slash the negatives. So this would be 6 over 2. But we can also simplify that to be 3. So m is equal to 3. Okay? So that's your task. So you're going to go ahead and work on that today, practicing with the slope formula when just given 2 points that the graph or that the line goes through.